I woke to the sound of 1,000 throats howling for blood. The noise wasn't human. It was layered, fractured, like different species shrieking through different kinds of lungs, gurgling, clicking, rumbling. The sound hit me like a storm inside a cavern, every vibration rattling my bones. I didn't know where I was at first. Cold chains cut into my wrists and ankles, pinning me to a slab of black stone. The air was heavy, thick with something that burned when I tried to breathe. My throat convulsed against it. Then my eyes adjusted. The ceiling stretched so high I couldn't see the end. The stone walls curved upward into an impossible dome, every surface etched with glowing runes that pulsed in time with the crowd's roar. Beyond the bars of my cell, a vast expanse opened, not a stadium, but a coliseum built for nightmares. The arena floor shimmered, metallic dust swirling like a storm under invisible currents. Above, tier after tier of creatures filled the stands, millions of eyes. Too many eyes, always too many, staring downward, hungry for spectacle. And at the center, lit by harsh pillars of white fire, stood one of them, the champion. I had never seen something so wrong and so flawless at the same time. 7 feet tall, skin the color of ivory polished to a shine, every muscle carved like a statue. Its face was sharp, symmetrical, disturbingly beautiful in a way that made my stomach twist. The crowd screamed its name, a guttural sequence I couldn't reproduce with my tongue. But it wasn't the beauty that froze me. It was the movement. The champion shifted with fluidity no body should have, like joints weren't held by bone but by something alive, writhing just beneath the surface. Each flex of muscle looked a half-second delayed, as if something else moved the flesh before the skeleton caught up. The champion wasn't alone on the floor. A man stood opposite him. Human. I don't know his name. He was younger than me, maybe mid-20s, thin but wiry, eyes wide and wild as he clutched a jagged spear the size of his body. His chest heaved with panic. He didn't belong here. None of US did. The champion tilted its head, almost gentle, as though examining a pet. Then it moved. It was too fast. One moment across the arena, the next standing inches from a man. The spear thrust, a desperate lunge, and the champion caught it with one hand. It didn't even look strained. The crowd erupted, their voices shaking the walls. Then the man screamed. The champion twisted the spear, snapping it like a twig, then slammed its palm against his chest. I heard ribs snap. He flew backward, skidding across the metallic sand. He tried to crawl, but the champion was already there, shadow looming over him. The final blow was casual, a sharp stomp on the spine. The sound was sharp, wet. The body jerked once and lay still. The arena shook with ecstasy. I couldn't breathe. My whole body quivered against the chains. I wanted to look away, but couldn't. They weren't fighting for sport. This wasn't about entertainment. It was ritual, slaughter dressed as spectacle, the worship of something that demanded blood. The corpse was dragged away by machines. Faceless drones that scuttled on spider-like legs, hissing steam as they scraped what remained into the dark tunnels beneath the floor. The champion bowed, the motion elegant, ceremonial. The crowd roared louder, voices blending into one monstrous throat. I realized with a clarity that burned, they were gods here. Not gods in truth, but gods in faith. Champions worshipped by thousands of alien voices, their strength unquestioned, their perfection unquestionable. No challenger survived. No one ever lived long enough to matter. And then the chains around my wrists rattled. The gate in front of me hissed, stone grinding as it began to rise. The torchlight spilled inward, cutting across my face. The crowd's roar shifted. They saw me now. They smelled new blood. My stomach twisted with acid. My knees buckled as guards shoved me forward, their claws clamping onto my arms with bone-crushing strength. I stumbled into the light, blinking against the fire columns, the ground vibrating under the crowd's frenzy. The metallic sand burned my feet. I knew what I was. Meat. They weren't expecting a fight. They were expecting a spectacle of death, the kind that reaffirmed the power of their gods. Another fragile human torn apart to keep their faith alive. The champion turned toward me. Its eyes locked onto mine. And I swear I saw something move beneath its skin. Something that wasn't muscle. Something alive. The crowd screamed. The gates slammed shut behind me. The chains were gone. I was alone on the floor, under the firelight, standing before a god, and in that moment, I understood the most terrifying truth. This wasn't a fight. This was an execution. The firelight painted everything in shades of white and shadow. My chest was tight, lungs refusing to work. The air burned, dry and metallic, every breath scraping my throat. I could barely hear my own heartbeat over the endless roar of the crowd. They weren't voices anymore. They were a single ocean of sound, breaking against the walls of the arena, demanding blood. And they were looking at me, the champion circled with deliberate grace, each movement practiced, ritualistic. It carried no weapon. It didn't need one. Its body was a weapon, sculpted perfection powered by something writhing just under the surface. Every ripple of muscle looked slightly wrong, like puppet strings being yanked too hard, too fast. I tried to move, but my legs felt disconnected from my body. My knees wanted to buckle. My head was swimming. I thought about the man before me, the way his spine snapped like a dry twig, how casually it was done, how quickly he'd been erased from existence. That was about to be me. The sand crunched under the champion's bare feet as it closed the distance. It didn't rush. It didn't need to. It wanted me to feel the weight of inevitability. Its eyes, pale and luminous, fixed on me with something between curiosity and contempt. My hands shook uncontrollably. They had given me nothing to fight with. No spear, no blade, not even armor. Just my bare skin, sweat already pouring down it, heart hammering so violently I thought it might burst. The champion tilted its head, almost playfully. Then it lunged. It was a blur of white and shadow. One moment 5 paces away. The next its fist streaked toward my skull. Reflex took over. I dropped sideways. The blow missed by inches, but the air cracked like a whip where its fist had passed. Sand exploded beside me. The crowd howled. I scrambled to my feet, lungs burning, trying to put space between us. My body felt sluggish, every nerve screaming. I wasn't trained for this. I wasn't a soldier, not a warrior, just a human thrown into the teeth of gods. The champion advanced, expression unchanged. A casual swipe of his arm, and I barely ducked in time. The wind of it clipped my ear. My balance faltered, and the champion kicked. The blow caught my ribs. The world flipped. I hit the ground hard, pain exploding in my chest. Something cracked inside me. Ribs, maybe more. The taste of iron flooded my mouth. I coughed blood onto the sand, trembling, trying to crawl away. The crowd laughed. The sound of it echoed through the arena like a chorus of jackals. I wasn't a fighter in their eyes. I was prey already dead, a slow, pathetic spectacle before the real entertainment. The kill. The champion walked toward me, unhurried. Something broke in me then. Not my bones. Those were already breaking, but something deeper. The cold certainty that this was it, that I was already finished. A strange clarity bled through the terror. And then something happened. The champion twitched. Just for an instant. Barely a flicker. Its perfect stride stuttered, its knee locking oddly, like a machine catching on a broken gear. It wasn't much, but it was there, undeniable. Its head snapped to the side, as though something inside it was jerking the flesh off rhythm. It recovered instantly, but I saw it. So did the crowd. The laughter faltered for half a heartbeat. I didn't understand it. Not then. But my body did. Fear surged through me, raw and primal. My heart hammered like a drum in my skull. My veins felt like they were filled with fire. The adrenaline was white-hot, overwhelming, the kind you only feel when you're seconds from being ripped apart. And the champion had flinched. It came at me again, faster this time, rage bleeding into its movements. I rolled aside, the sand scraping my skin raw. Its fist smashed into ground where I'd been. The impact shook the arena floor, sending shards of stone into the air. I staggered up, legs barely working. My ribs screamed with every breath. But I noticed something else. The more terrified I became, the more the champion's movement seemed off. A twitch, a ripple under the skin, a flash of strain in its otherwise perfect face. It was like my fear heard it. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't have time to know. It was on me again. This time I wasn't fast enough. Its hand closed around my throat and lifted me off the ground like I weighed nothing. My feet kicked uselessly, sand spraying beneath me. My vision blurred as it squeezed. Its eyes locked on mine. And beneath the pale glow, beneath the massive beauty, I saw movement. Something alive under the skin, writhing in agitation. For a heartbeat, I swore I saw veins bulge, wriggling as though filled with worms. It snarled, not in anger but in discomfort. My vision darkened at the edges. I clawed at its wrist, nails tearing skin without effect. I was dying, the roar of the crowd dimming in my ears. And then, in a last desperate convulsion, I drove my thumb at its eye. The champion jerked back violently. Not because of pain, not exactly. It was more like something inside it recoiled. It threw me down, clutching its face. I landed hard, ribs shrieking, head bouncing against the sand. Spots of light filled my vision. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. But I saw it. The champion stood frozen, its face twitching, one eye flickering with strange movements under the surface, as though something beneath was writhing out of sync. The crowd gasped, a wave of disbelief. Then the moment passed. The champion straightened, face smoothing, composure restored. It looked at me with renewed fury. But the truth was already burned into my mind. My fear, my adrenaline, had done something. It had hurt it. The fight didn't end in triumph. Not yet. The champion came at me again, faster, harder. I barely survived. Its fist battered me. Its foot smashed into my side, my body crumpling under the assault. I was thrown, kicked, slammed into the sand again and again. My bones screamed. My vision blurred. My body was a ruin of blood and agony. But it didn't kill me. Not right away. It dragged me across the floor, lifted me for the final blow. But before it could finish me, a horn blared, a deep, vibrating sound that shook the dome itself. The crowd roared in response. The champion froze, then dropped me like a broken toy. My body hit the ground, limp. I barely registered the machine scuttling out, their metal claws grasping me, dragging me back toward the darkness of the tunnels. I wasn't dead. Not yet. The last thing I saw before the shadows swallowed me was a champion staring after me, its face perfectly calm, but its eyes still twitching. And then I understood the most fragile, most terrifying hope. There was something wrong with them. And somehow, my fear was a key. I woke, choking on the taste of metal. At first, I thought I was still in the arena, sprawled on the burning sand with the crowd screaming for my death. My chest convulsed, ribs stabbing my lungs. Every breath a spike of fire. My eyes flicked open to darkness, and for a few terrifying moments, I thought I was blind. But no. Faint green light seeped from cracks in the walls, slimy veins pulsing to the stone like bioluminescent roots. I was back in the tunnels. Back in the place where they threw the broken, not the dead. My body felt shredded. I couldn't move my left arm at all. My ribs were a shattered cage grinding with every breath. My throat was raw, purple bruises swelling where the champion had squeezed it. I wanted to believe I'd survived because of strength, because I had fought back. But I knew the truth. I had survived because something inside the champion faltered. And it hadn't been an accident. I tried to piece it together through the fog of pain. The twitch, the sudden stutter in its perfect movements, the way its eye had flickered, the skin beneath writhing like something alive was pushing outward. And that moment when I felt terror flooding every cell of my body, when adrenaline burned like fire in my veins, that was when it had broken rhythm. That was when it had twitched, not because of me, not because of any blow I landed, because of my fear. The realization should have made me feel strong. It didn't. It made me feel sick. I wasn't a fighter. I was prey. And somehow, the only thing that kept me alive was the one thing I couldn't control. The raw, choking panic of being hunted. I lay there in the darkness for hours, or maybe days. Time meant nothing in the tunnels. No sun, no clocks. Just the steady pulse of those glowing veins and the sounds of distant machines dragging away corpses. Sometimes I heard them closer, scraping across the stone, claws ticking, metal bodies dripping with the fluids of the dead. Sometimes they carried parts, not whole bodies. The champions were not merciful. And then I began to notice something else. A sound. At first, I thought it was the machines. A wet, slithering noise echoing faintly through the stone corridors. But it wasn't metal. It was organic. A shuffle, a scrape, like something slick moving inside walls just beyond reach. Sometimes it came with a faint vibration, as though the stone itself was humming. The first time I heard it, I pressed my ear against the wall, and I felt it, something moving, slowly, patiently, like a worm the size of a tree root, slithering inside the stone. I recoiled, bile rising in my throat. That was when the memories of the champion's body rushed back in, the way its muscles moved half a second off, the unnatural ripple beneath its skin, the twitch when I'd felt most afraid. It wasn't perfect. It was a host for something else. I should have stopped thinking about it. Should have tried to sleep, to save my strength. But the thought burrowed into me like a splinter I couldn't dig out. When the machines returned, dragging another body into the tunnels, I forced myself to look, not at the human they carried, his chest caved in, skull shattered, but at what dripped from the claws of the drones. A trail of fluids, thick and oily, that glistened in the green light. I expected blood. It wasn't. It pulsed. I swear it did. The drops quivered, as though tiny things moved inside them. When the machine scuttled past, one glob slid across the floor like it had a mind of its own, wriggling until it seeped into a crack in the stone. My stomach knotted. My skin crawled so badly I thought I could feel worms under it. They weren't just parasites. They were everywhere. In the walls, in the sand, in the bodies of their gods. And I was trapped in their hive. I pressed my back against the stone, curling against the pain, trying not to breathe too loudly. I didn't want them to hear me. I didn't want them to notice. But deep down, I knew they already had. I don't remember when they brought me food, if you could call it that. A tray slid into the cell, covered in something gelatinous, gray lumps twitching faintly as though not entirely dead. I didn't touch it. Hunger clawed my belly, but fear was worse. I thought of the parasites sliding in my throat if I tried. Hours later, a sound broke the silence. Not the crowd, not the machines. A whisper, not from outside the cell, from inside my head. It was faint like static, but it had rhythm, a pulse, the same rhythm as the veins glowing the walls. My skull buzzed with it, my teeth rattling. I curled tighter, pressing my hands over my ears. But it didn't matter. It wasn't sound. It was inside me. We see you. The words weren't English. They weren't even words. Not really. They were impulses, shapes of thought that stabbed into me and assembled themselves into meaning. My chest locked. My breath hitched. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. We see your fear. We drink it. And just like that, it was gone. The whispers vanished. The humming in the walls faded. The pain in my skull eased. I sat in silence, trembling, rocking against the wall. I wasn't just fighting the champions. I was fighting the things inside them, the things in the walls, the things in the arena sand, the things pulsing in the blood that dripped from their machines. And they already knew me. I don't know how long it was before the guards came. The door shrieked open, claws gripping my arms, dragging me out. My ribs screamed as I stumbled, legs barely holding me. I tried to resist, but it was useless. They pulled me like a doll, their grip iron, their faces blank. The tunnels gave way to light again. The roar of the crowd thundered from above. They were sending me back. I should have been terrified. I was terrified. My stomach churned with acid. My legs shook. Sweat poured down my skin. But there was something else now. A thought, jagged and unwelcome. When I was most afraid, when my blood was molten with adrenaline, the champion faltered. The parasite flinched. And that was the only reason I was still alive. I didn't know what that meant yet. Didn't know how to use it. But as the guards shoved me toward the rising gate, the arena firelight spilling across my broken body, one thought carved itself into me like stone. If I want to survive, I would have to turn my fear into a weapon. And if the parasites hated it, If it hurt them, then maybe, just maybe, I had found the one weakness in their gods. The gate rose with the sound of stone grinding against stone, and the roar of the crowd hit me like a tidal wave. I staggered forward into the firelight, ribs bound crudely with strips of black cloth, every breath sharp as knives. My left arm still hung useless at my side, but the guards had given me something new, a weapon, not a blade or spear, just a jagged length of iron, pitted with rust, heavy enough to weigh down my good arm. It wasn't a gift. It was a joke, something to make the slaughter more entertaining. The arena floor shimmered in the heat, the metallic dust swirling under invisible currents. I could smell the copper tang of old blood baked into the sand. I could almost hear the screams of those who had died here before me. And then I saw my opponent. The champion who entered through the opposite gate wasn't the same one as before. This one was taller, bulkier, its pale skin glowing faintly under the firelight. Its muscles rippled like liquid beneath the surface. Every step it took was poetry in motion, flawless, precise, terrifying. The crowd screamed its name. I don't know why, but hearing it made my stomach twist. The sound wasn't just worship, it was submission, the way lesser things cry out for their gods. And that's when it hit me. If I fought like them, I'd die like them. Every other gladiator, human, alien, beast, had gone out there with honor. They swung their weapons. They screamed defiance. They fought until they were crushed like insects. The champions always won because they knew how to predict those fights. They knew how to dominate with strength, with ceremony, with their parasite-fed perfection. But me? I wasn't strong. I wasn't fast. I wasn't even whole anymore. So I couldn't fight like them. I had to fight like me. The gate slammed shut behind me. The champion tilted its head, smiling with that strange, inhuman grace. Then it charged. I didn't raise the iron bar. I didn't stand tall. I didn't even try to meet it head on. I ran. The crowd roared with fury, a wave of booing, screeching, alien laughter. To them, I was pathetic, dishonorable prey. They wanted spectacle. They wanted a brave stand. And instead, I was a rat scurrying through the sand. The champion pursued, fast as lightning. It closed the distance in seconds, leaping forward, hand outstretched to tear me down. That's when I dropped flat, face first into sand. The champion's leap carried it over me, and for the first time, it stumbled. Just a half second of imbalance. But I was already rolling to my knees, swinging the iron bar low. It cracked across the back of its knee, with a sharp, meaty thud. The sound wasn't bone-breaking. It was something worse. Something wet and wriggling beneath the flesh, like I'd struck a sack of worms. The champion screamed, not in pain, in rage. Its knee buckled, twitching violently. For the briefest moment, the perfect body faltered. The parasites had twitched. The crowd's fury boiled over, a tidal wave of boos and roars. I could feel their hatred pounding against me like heat. To them, I wasn't just dishonorable. I was insulting their gods. The champion recovered quickly, spinning with impossible grace. Its hand lashed out, catching me across the face. My vision burst into white. I hit the sand hard, spitting blood and teeth. It lunged again, but this time I didn't fight fair. I flung a handful of sand straight into its eyes. The parasite inside it spasmed again. The champion reeled backward, clawing at its own face, twitching uncontrollably as grains of metallic dust slid beneath its eyelids. The crowd screamed with outrage. I didn't care. I surged forward, swinging the iron bar with everything I had. It connected with the side of the champion's skull. Once, twice, a third time. Each blow echoed with a sickening crack, and beneath the surface I saw it. The twitching, writhing things trying to keep the body moving, jerking against my strikes. The champion staggered but didn't fall. Its perfect face was twisted now, spasming. Its muscles rippled unnaturally, like 1,000 worms pushing against the skin. The crowd hated me. They wanted me torn apart. They wanted their god to stand unbroken. But for the first time in centuries, maybe longer, they saw something else. They saw God humiliated. I stumbled back, chest heaving, vision blurry. My ribs screamed with every breath. My arm trembled under the weight of the iron bar. I wasn't winning. Not yet. The champion was still faster, stronger, more deadly than anything human. But I had done something no one else had ever done. I had made it bleed. The champion snarled, lunging at me with renewed fury. Its hands closed around my shoulders, lifting me off the ground like a doll. My ribs crunched again, fire lancing through my chest. It slammed me down into the sand, pinning me. Its face loomed close, twitching, twitching, twitching. The parasites were writhing inside it, agitated, confused. And then something in me snapped. Not fear, not this time. Something colder. I spat blood into its face. The crowd gasped, a wave of outrage rolling through the stands. Spitting was the lowest act of disrespect in almost every culture I'd ever known. Here, in the sacred arena, it was unthinkable. The champion froze for a heartbeat, not because of the spit, but because the parasites inside it twitched violently at my act of defiance. I drove my thumb straight at its eye. Again, the same move that had saved me before. This time I didn't hesitate, didn't stop when it jerked. I pressed harder, gouging deep. The champion screamed, not with pain, but with something worse. Its body convulsed, twitching violently as though the parasite inside was thrashing. Its skin bulged, veins writhing, the eye socket collapsing beneath my thumb. The crowd roared in horror. Some screamed, some booed, but all of them watched. None could look away. The champion threw me off, staggering backward. Blood, black, glistening, poured from its ruined eye. But it wasn't blood alone. Worm-like things writhed in the fluid, twitching violently before retreating beneath its skin. I forced myself to stand, every bone screaming, my chest on fire. I raised the iron bar, trembling, and spat again onto the sand. The crowd's hatred was deafening. But beneath it, I heard something else. Murmurs, confusion, doubt. The champion wasn't untouchable. And I wasn't fighting like prey. I was fighting like something else. That night, when they dragged me back to the tunnels, broken but breathing, I couldn't stop trembling. Not from fear, but from something close to madness. My ribs felt like shattered glass. My face was swollen, my body a ruin. But I had lived. And for the first time, a god had not left the arena flawless. The parasites were not invincible, and I had found their crack. The tunnel smelled of rust and blood. I lay on the stone floor for what felt like hours, ribs bound tight, every inch of me throbbing. The guards didn't speak. They didn't even look at me. They just waited, their eyes glowing faintly in the dark. For them, I wasn't a man. I was a tool, a piece in their eternal ritual. But something had changed. The parasites inside the champion had faltered, twitching, struggling. The look on the crowd's faces as they watched their god stumble. I couldn't shake it. For the first time, doubt had entered their perfect little theater, and I was still breathing. When the next gate opened, I knew it wasn't just another fight. It was a test. The crowd's roar was different tonight. Louder, frenzied, not just excitement, desperation. They wanted a correction. They wanted proof that their champions were still divine, still untouchable. I had to be destroyed, publicly, violently. The arena glowed under the eternal firelight, shadows stretching long across the metallic sand. My body screamed with every step, but my mind burned with something sharper than pain. The gate across from me opened, and it entered. This champion was different, taller than the last. Its skin smooth and pale as polished stone, veins faintly luminous beneath the surface. Its eyes burned with a steady, unnatural glow. No smile, no ceremony, just silence as it advanced, step by measured step, like a predator that already knew the ending. The crowd went still. Even their voices seemed to falter. This was their executioner, their perfect beast. I gripped the iron bar in my hand. My palm was slick with sweat and blood. I knew if I swung it straight, if I fought with pride, I'd die. But pride wasn't my weapon. Fear was. I forced myself to stagger, to limp, to look weak. Let them think I was broken. Let the champion think I was prey. It worked. It closed the distance quickly, movement so smooth they didn't seem real. In an instant, its hand was around my throat, lifting me into the air. My feet kicked helplessly, my lungs burning. The crowd erupted in triumph. But I wasn't done. I let the iron bar slip from my hand, clattering against the sand below. The champion tilted its head, confused for a fraction of a second. That was all I needed. I spat in its face again. The parasites twitched. Its perfect grip faltered. My body dropped like a stone. I hit the ground hard, rolled, and snatched up the bar. This time I didn't swing at limbs. I went for the head. The first strike cracked across its temple. It staggered. The second blow smashed into its jaw, dislocating it with a sickening pop. The third caved half its face inward, spraying black ichor across the sand. The crowd screamed, not in triumph this time, but in outrage. In horror, the champion convulsed, falling to its knees. Its head snapped unnaturally side to side, parasites beneath the skin writhing violently, trying to stitch together what I had ruined. Veins bulged, skin tore, things slithered beneath the surface like snakes trapped in a bag. I screamed with it, not in fear, in fury. Every strike I drove into its head was every nightmare I had lived in this pit, every wound, every humiliation. The bar sank deeper. Bone gave way. Flesh collapsed. The parasites writhed harder, spilling out to the ruined skull, slick and glistening, wriggling frantically across the sand. The crowd shrieked in unison, their perfect ritual shattered before their eyes. I didn't stop. I crushed the skull until it was nothing but black fluid and twitching worms. The body collapsed forward, spasming. The parasites writhed, trying to escape, trying to find another host. For the first time, I realized something. They weren't gods. They were afraid. I dropped the bar, chest heaving, vision spinning. My entire body was shaking, blood dripping down my arms, my face, soaking the sand beneath me. The crowd was deathly silent. Not a roar, not a cheer, just silence. And then the whisper began. Thousands of voices murmuring, hissing, a tide of disbelief. The parasite within the crowd itself, whatever network controlled them, seemed to falter. I could feel it like static in the air. I had killed a god. The guards didn't wait. They rushed the arena, dragging me from the sand, their claws biting into my arms. They didn't celebrate. They didn't strike me down. They just pulled me back into the tunnels, as if my very presence was a contamination. Behind me, I heard the sound of the corpse convulsing. The parasites within it shrieked in unison, their voices like wet, tearing static. Then silence. The body didn't rise again. When the gate slammed shut, I collapsed against a stone wall, gasping, every nerve on fire. I should have felt triumph, victory, but instead I felt something colder. They weren't just going to kill me now. They were going to break me. I had broken the game. And worse, I had shown the crowd that their gods could bleed. That night, in the dark of the cell, I didn't sleep. I lay awake, trembling, every sound magnified. The air itself felt different. For the first time, I wasn't just prey. I was the infection, and infection spread. They didn't starve me this time. When the guards came, I noticed it. A tray of meat, half burned and dripping, shoved into my cell hours before the gates opened. Not kindness, not pity, an experiment. They wanted to see how I'd fight on a full stomach. Whether strength would make me predictable. Everything about me now was under their microscope. The whispers hadn't stopped since my first kill. I could hear them even to the walls of the arena, voices spilling through ventilation shafts, vibrating through metal, a hive mind buzzing with unrest. The crowd wasn't celebrating their gods anymore. They were talking about me, the human, the break in the ritual. When the guards dragged me into the pit again, the air itself felt wrong. The torches burned lower. The sand was darker, damp with fresh blood from some poor wretch before me. And the crowd, they weren't roaring in triumph this time. They were waiting, leaning forward, watching me. The gate across the arena opened. 2 champions stepped out. My throat went dry. They had never done that before. The ritual had always been one challenger, one god. A perfect ceremonial duel. But I wasn't part of the ceremony anymore. The crowd murmured in unison, rippling waves of shock. Some screamed in protest. Others laughed with savage joy. But I understood. They wanted to erase me with spectacle. They wanted to drown my defiance under twice the power. The first champion was massive, scales glistening under the torchlight, spines jutting from its shoulders like spears. Its arms were longer than my entire body. The second was leaner, faster, its movements twitching unnaturally as though the parasites inside it were already boiling. They didn't posture. They didn't wait. They charged. I ran. Not toward them. Away. Across the sand. Weaving. Stumbling like a coward. The crowd roared with outrage. This wasn't fighting. This wasn't honor. This was shame. But that was the point. The fast one caught me first. It lunged, claws tearing across my back, hot blood spraying. I dropped to the ground, writhing, screaming. The bigger one closed in, jaws opening wide. That's when I reached down, scooped a handful of sand, and threw it straight into its eyes. The crowd gasped as one. No one had ever done that. The champion howled, stumbling, blinded, parasites writhing beneath its skin in confusion. The lean one slashed again, but I rolled, grabbed its leg, and sank my teeth into it. My jaw nearly broke on its hide, but the parasites reacted anyway, convulsing, shuddering, faltering just enough. I didn't let go. I bit harder. Harder. Flesh tore. Black ichor sprayed across my face. The champion screeched, jerking back violently. The crowd screamed with me. For the first time, they weren't horrified. They were hungry. The big one, half blind, swung blindly. Its claws slashed the smaller one instead of me, raking across its chest in a spray of ichor. The parasites inside both of them shrieked, confused, their rhythms breaking. That's when I knew. The parasites couldn't handle chaos. They needed order, ritual, predictable cycles of dominance and submission, and I was tearing that apart. I scrambled to my feet, coughing blood, eyes wide and wild. The crowd saw me not as prey now, but as something different, something feral. The lean champion staggered toward me, leaking black fluid, its jaw twitching unnaturally. I didn't meet it head-on. I dropped flat on my back, let it pounce, then jammed my iron bar upward into its mouth. The parasite inside shrieked through its host's throat as the bar burst through the skull, black worms exploding outward in a shower. They writhed on the sand, burning in the torchlight, shriveling like exposed nerves. The crowd lost their minds. The big champion, half blind and stumbling, roared in frustration. But I wasn't done with dishonor. I circled it, darting close, stabbing the ruined skull to fall on one again and again, scooping the parasites onto my weapon like writhing bait. Then I hurled them at the big one. The parasites hit its skin and burned like acid. The creature screamed, convulsing, staggering back as its own kind tore its flesh. The crowd wasn't chanting anymore. They were shrieking, howling, pounding the arena walls with their fists. I didn't give them a clean kill. I didn't give them a god's death. I leapt on the blinded giant's back, clawed at its throat with bare fingers, jammed my hand deep into its gills until I felt something hot and writhing. Then I ripped. The parasite came out screaming, a long, slick, eel-like thing, teeth snapping, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. I held it high above my head as it writhed, screeching, spraying ichor over my face and chest. The crowd erupted. Some roared in awe, some in fury. The entire arena shook with it. I didn't stop. I slammed the parasite onto the sand, stomped it until it was pulp, until black ichor and shattered nerves coated my feet. The champion fell limp beneath me, twitching once, then silent. The arena went dead quiet. I stood there, chest heaving, covered in blood and ichor, parasites dripping from my hands. And then I did something no gladiator in their history had ever done. I spat on the corpse. The silence shattered into chaos. Some of the crowd screamed for my death. Others screamed for more. The hive mind was splitting apart, fragmenting, cracking down the middle. I looked up into the stands, straight at them, my eyes wide, my face a mask of blood, my body trembling with adrenaline. You see, I screamed, voice hoarse, barely human. They're not gods. They're weak. The words weren't in their tongue, but they understood. The parasites inside them understood, and they recoiled. That night, Dragged back to my cell, the guards didn't look triumphant. They looked afraid. Their hands shook. Their eyes avoided mine. For the first time since I'd been captured, I realized something horrifying. I wasn't just surviving. I was winning. And worse for them, the crowd wanted me to keep going. The noise didn't stop. Even after the gates closed and I was dragged back to the tunnels, even as the guards shoved me down the dripping corridors, the sound followed, a storm above me, vibrating through the stone and metal. The crowd wasn't quiet anymore. They weren't whispering. They weren't chanting for gods. They were screaming my name, not my human name. They didn't know that. What they screamed was a guttural, jagged sound, my prison number twisted into something their throats could handle. But it was me. Their voices, millions of them, thundered my existence into bones of the arena. And that was the moment I realized something terrifying. They didn't just want me dead anymore. They wanted me to win. The guard shoved me into my cell and slammed the bars shut. I collapsed on the stone, covered in blood and ichor, trembling, shaking. My own breath rasped in my throat, but I wasn't alone with it. The parasites were still screaming. I could feel them, faint, thin, not just in the corpses I'd left behind, but in the walls themselves. In the air, a microscopic echo, a trembling itch in my skull. They were connected. A hive, a network, and what I'd done in the arena had broken something. When I tore that parasite out, when I crushed it underfoot, they felt it, all of them, and they were afraid. For hours I lay there, half-conscious, every nerve lit up, every drop of adrenaline still searing through my blood. My wounds throbbed, my vision swam. I tasted iron. But worse than the pain was the anticipation. I knew they weren't going to let me rest long. The next fight came sooner than I expected. No time to heal. No bandages. They pulled me from the cell while my back was still raw, while my ribs still screamed with every step. They wanted me weak, broken. But when the gates opened again, I saw their mistake. The crowd had changed. They weren't chanting for the champions this time. They were chanting for me. The air shook with it. The hive mind of voices split in two, some spitting curses. Others roared my number like a prayer. The parasites inside them trembled, feeding on their confusion, their faith fracturing like shattered glass. For the first time, the arena was divided, and the masters didn't like it. They sent out one of their oldest champions, a giant, draped in ceremonial armor, its body covered in carved symbols that glowed faintly in the torchlight. It moved slowly, deliberately, each step a sermon. This was supposed to restore order, to remind the crowd what they worshipped. But when it raised its blade to salute, I didn't salute back. I spat in the sand. The crowd erupted, half in rage, half in ecstasy. The split grew deeper. The parasite inside the champion twitched. I saw it, a flicker beneath the flesh, a hesitation where there should have been perfect rhythm. It knew the fight was brutal. Every swing of its blade could have cut me in half. I ducked, rolled, scrambled across the sand. I wasn't faster. I wasn't stronger. I wasn't even whole anymore. My body was failing. But I was unpredictable. I feigned weakness, dropping my weapon, staggering like I'd lost balance. The crowd booed, cursed, but when the champion lunged, I dropped low and slashed its leg. The parasite spasmed. The champion faltered. And I smiled. That smile broke them more than any wound. The crowd saw it. The parasite felt it. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving. I was enjoying it. That terrified them. I began fighting like no gladiator ever had. I screamed obscenities. I laughed when the champion's blade missed. I threw sand, spat blood into its eyes, yanked at its armor straps until they snapped. Every dishonor was a wound deeper than my blade could cut. The parasite shrieked inside its host, a sound only I seemed to hear. The rhythm broke completely. The champion's movements grew sloppy, desperate. The audience, those who once worshipped it, now jeered. Not at me, at it. Their god was failing. When I brought it down, I didn't strike a clean killing blow. I dragged it across the sand toward armor way, exposed the twitching, writhing things beneath its flesh. I forced the crowd to see. The parasites weren't gods. They were leeches. Worms. Frauds. The crowd screamed. Some vomited. Others roared approval. The divide widened into a chasm. I held the dying champion's face in my hands, stared into its eyes as a parasite screamed through its throat. "You feel it, don't you?" I whispered, my voice raw, broken. "Fear," for the first time. Then I snapped its neck. The parasite inside wailed and went still. The arena exploded. They didn't drag me back to my cell this time. The guards looked at me differently now, not as cargo, not as an expendable animal. They looked at me like a plague, a virus that had slipped through the bars and begun infecting everything it touched. The crowd outside still roared. Some called for my death. Others demanded more fights. The hive mind was collapsing, fracturing into pieces. And I realized something that made my blood run cold. The parasites weren't just feeding on their host bodies. They were feeding on faith, on belief, and I was starving them. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not from pain, not from hunger, but from the sound. The parasites in the walls whispered louder now. Not rage, not hunger, but fear. A constant, high-pitched is echoing inside my skull. And I knew what it meant. They weren't just afraid of me. They were beginning to hate me. The walls shook that night. Not from the crowd above, not from the grinding gears of the arena machinery, but from the parasites themselves. Their whispers weren't whispers anymore. They had turned to screams. Endless, high-pitched shrieks bleeding through the stone, rattling in my skull like nails dragged across glass. I couldn't block it out. I pressed my hands against my ears until my fingernails cut skin. Still, the sound burrowed through bone. They hated me. And hate, I realized, was just another form of fear. When the guards came for me again, they were careful. They didn't shove me, didn't jeer, didn't even speak. Their faces were stiff, pale beneath their ridged helmets. The parasites inside them were quivering, and they didn't want to get too close. I wasn't just a gladiator anymore. I was a contagion. The gates opened. The arena wasn't the same place I had walked into the first time. The sand was black with old blood, the air thick with smoke and incense. The crowd was a storm, voices clashing, crashing, grinding against each other. Half still chanted for the champions. The other half, louder, hungrier, chanted for me. My number, my name, twisted through alien tongues. It rattled in my chest, not as pride, but as dread, because I knew what this meant. I wasn't just fighting for my life anymore. I was fighting to dismantle a religion. They sent not one champion this time. Not two. 5. They emerged from separate gates, their bodies gleaming in ritual armor, their weapons carved with glowing runes. Each was a different species, but all had the same twitching, unnatural rhythm to their movements. Parasite puppets. The crowd howled. Some cheered, some spat curses, some tore their own skin in rage. The hive mind was cracking under its own weight. And me? I felt calm, terrifyingly calm, because now I understood something I hadn't before. It wasn't strength that terrified the parasites. It was defiance. The first one lunged at me, a towering beast with 4 arms and a jagged spear. I didn't meet its charge head-on. I dropped to my knees, slid under its body, and drove my blade up into the soft place where its armor didn't cover. The parasite inside shrieked. Its rhythm broke. Before it could recover, I twisted the blade, ripped the creature down into the dirt, and tore open its flesh with my bare hands. The crowd screamed as the parasite spilled out, a slick, writhing worm with too many eyes, twitching in the sand. I didn't kill it quickly. I held it up high for all of them to see, its body spasming, its teeth gnashing. I roared, my voice cracked raw, is your God. The arena shook. Half the crowd wailed in denial. The other half screamed in savage joy. The parasite hissed, and I crushed it in my fist. Blood sprayed down my arm. The host beneath me spasmed and went limp. The other 4 champions hesitated. That was all I needed. I didn't fight them in a duel. I didn't honor their ceremonies. I turned the arena into a trap. I dragged corpses across the sand, forced the others to trip over their own fallen. I threw broken weapons into their paths. I ripped armor plates off the dead and hurled them like shields. I fought like no gladiator ever had. Because I wasn't one, I was an animal. And animals don't play by rules. The second one fell when I feigned collapse. I dropped to the sand, gasping, clawing weakly at the ground. The crowd jeered, half of them spitting on my cowardice. The champion strode forward, blade raised high. But the parasites didn't see the sharp stone I'd buried beneath my palm. When it lifted me by the throat, I jammed the stone into its eye, over and over until it shrieked and dropped me. Blood and ichor rained down, spattering my face, but I didn't stop. By the time it collapsed, the crowd wasn't jeering anymore. They were howling. The third came at me with a ceremonial axe, bellowing its war cry. The crowd answered back with the same cry, but weaker, fractured, their voices uncertain. I met the champion head-on, not because I was stronger, but because I wanted to make a point. I let its axe graze my shoulder, let the pain light up my body like fire. The parasite twitched at the surge of adrenaline. I saw the moment its rhythm broke. I laughed in its face. Then I headbutted until my skull split open and its parasite screamed in my ear. The fourth and fifth came at once. By then I wasn't fighting for myself anymore. I was performing. I knew it. The crowd knew it. Even the parasites knew it. I let one chase me into the corner, then rolled aside at the last second, letting it crash into the stone. Its parasite screamed as the host's bone shattered. The fifth hesitated just long enough for me to drive a broken spear through its chest, pinning it to the wall. Both writhed. Both parasites shrieked. And the crowd was no longer divided. They were roaring for me. Not half, not some, all of them. The cycle was broken. I stood in the center of the arena, soaked in blood, my chest heaving. The sand was littered with bodies, twitching parasites, and broken symbols of faith. I raised my arms, not in victory, but in defiance, and the parasites on the walls screamed so loud the air vibrated. I felt them trying to reach me, trying to claw into my mind, to drown me in their hatred. But it wasn't working. The crowd was no longer feeding them. Their gods were dead, and I was the one who killed them. That night, back in my cell, I didn't hear whispers. I didn't hear screams. I heard silence. The parasites weren't speaking anymore. They were waiting, planning, because now it wasn't about survival. It was about war. The silence didn't last. It never does. For a single night, I thought I had won. I thought I had cut the heart out of their gods, torn the cycle down to the bone, and left them with nothing but corpses to worship. But parasites don't need faith. They only need flesh. The whispers came back, louder, sharper, not drifting through the walls this time. Inside my head, I would close my eyes and I would see them, not in dreams, in flashes. A dozen eyes blinking under my skin, tendrils writhing behind my ribs, my own veins glowing with their pulse. I would wake gasping, claw at myself, convinced they'd finally found a way in. Sometimes I wasn't sure they hadn't. The next time the guards came for me, they were trembling. Their hands twitched on their spears. Their armor rattled with each step. But not all of that fear belonged to them. Their parasites were stirring. I could see it. Their movements too sharp, too quick. Their eyes flickering with something not entirely theirs. It wasn't just the champions anymore. The parasites were spreading. When the gates opened, I knew the arena had changed. The sand wasn't sand. It was moving, shifting under my boots as though something was alive beneath it. The crowd wasn't cheering. They were screaming, some in joy, some in terror. And above us, clinging to the walls and ceiling like tumors, the parasites had begun to show themselves. Not worms anymore. Monsters. Their bodies bloated with stolen blood. Their mouths open wide enough to swallow heads whole. Their tendrils slithering into cracks and throats, latching onto anything they touched. The gods were coming out of hiding. They didn't send champions this time. They sent the parasites themselves. The first one burst from the ground, tearing through the sand like a geyser of flesh. Its tendrils lashed out, snaring a corpse from last fight, dragging it into its gaping maw. It screamed with my voice. Not my words, my voice. The crowd recoiled in horror. I almost did too. But fear was what they wanted wasn't it? Fear was food, so I swallowed mine. I grinned into the storm of shrieks, and I ran straight at it. My blade sank into its hide, but the parasite didn't falter. Its body was layered, armored with the shells of its hosts. The weapon bent, snapped in my grip, the tendrils wrapped around my chest. They burned like fire as they squeezed, worming against my skin as if hunting for a way in. I roared, not in pain, but in rage, and that was when it faltered. Not fear, rage. It wasn't the same reaction, but it was something. I drove my broken blade into its eye, over and over, until black fluid sprayed across the sand. When it collapsed, the crowd didn't cheer. They gasped because the parasite didn't die quietly. It split open, and more poured out, dozens of them, small ones, twitching, writhing, screeching, infant parasites. They crawled across the arena floor like maggots spilling from a wound. The guards and stands panicked, trying to keep them contained, but it was already too late. The arena wasn't a stage anymore. It was an infection. The second parasite came down from the ceiling. Huge. Its body stretched across the arena walls, tendrils webbing the air like ropes. I could hear it whispering in my mind. You are ours. You are ours. You are ours. The crowd clutched their heads, some dropping to their knees, some clawing their own eyes out to stop the voices. I didn't kneel. I didn't claw. I screamed back. The sound ripped from my lungs until blood ran down my throat. And for 1 second, one precious second, the parasite froze. Its voice stuttered. That was all I needed. I ripped a spear from the corpse of a fallen guard and hurled it upward with every ounce of strength left in my body. The spear struck deep. The parasite screeched and recoiled, its body tearing from the wall. It fell into the arena with a quake that shook the entire Colosseum. The crowd roared, but it wasn't worship anymore. It was chaos. By the time the third appeared, I wasn't sure if I was still myself. The whispers weren't just outside now. They were in my blood. I could feel them pressing against the edges of my mind, twisting my thoughts, bending my rage into something darker. Join us. You already are us. You fight like us. You kill like us. And maybe they were right. Maybe every dirty trick, every broken rule, every act of dishonor. Maybe it wasn't me. Maybe it was them. Maybe I was just becoming another parasite. But then I looked at the crowd, at their faces, terrified, enthralled, divided, at the way their faith was crumbling, the way the lies were unraveling. And I realized something the parasites never could. I wasn't fighting to survive anymore. I was fighting to show them the truth. And the truth was more dangerous than fear. The third parasite came up from the sand with a screech. Its tendrils lashed at me, but I didn't dodge. I grabbed one with both hands and let it burn through my skin. The pain was unimaginable, but so was the adrenaline. And I saw it again. That twitch, that stutter. The parasite faltered. I didn't hesitate. I dragged it closer, closer, until my teeth sank into its flesh. I bit. I tore. And as its blood filled my mouth, I laughed. The crowd erupted. The parasite screamed. And for the first time, I knew they weren't gods. They weren't even masters. They were prey. The war had begun. Not in silence, not in whispers, but in screams. And I was leading it. The arena was burning. Not with fire, with infection. The parasites had spilled from the walls, the ceiling, the sand. Their tendrils knotted through the Colosseum like veins. The corpses of guards and champions lay scattered across the floor, their bodies twitching as parasites crawled into them, wearing them like suits. The crowd was in chaos. Some ran for the exits, clawing over each other in desperation. Others fell to their knees in worship, arms stretched to the writhing sky. And some were already lost, their faces split open, their eyes gone black with parasite light. But me? I stood in the center, and I laughed. I wasn't afraid anymore. That was their mistake. I'd given them everything they wanted. My fear, my screams, my blood. I had been their prey, their toy, their trembling morsel. And I had learned something in return. They could not survive my terror. They could not survive my rage. They could not survive me. The whispers inside my head weren't whispers now. They were shrieks, begging, threatening, promising. Join us. Become us. We will make you more than human. We will make you endless, eternal. But I spat blood into the sand and grinned. I don't need forever. I raised a broken spear in my hand. I only need tonight. The first parasite lunged. Its body was bloated, thick with stolen muscle. Its tendrils reached for my throat. But I didn't dodge. I grabbed them, let them coil around my wrists, burning through flesh to bone. Then I pulled, harder than I'd ever pulled anything in my life. Its body tore apart like wet cloth, spilling black ichor across the floor. The crowd howled. The second parasite erupted from a corpse, wearing the body of a fallen champion like armor. Its skull split down the middle, the parasite's tendrils blooming out like wings. It came at me swinging a jagged blade. I dropped low, scooped up a handful of the arena sand, and hurled it into the thing's face. It faltered, just enough. I drove the broken spear through its jaw, into its skull, and split both parasite and host in half. The crowd roared. The third came from above, descending like a dripping nightmare. I didn't fight it with steel. I fought it with my hands. I caught its tendril mid-strike, twisted it around my arm, and slammed it into the ground, over and over, until the parasite screamed in frequencies that shattered glass and burst eardrums in the stands. When it finally stopped moving, I realized I was kneeling on its corpse, my hands drenched in its blood. The crowd didn't know what to do anymore. They weren't cheering. They weren't worshiping. They were watching, silent, terrified. I stood. I looked up at them, the entire Colosseum, thousands of alien faces staring down at me. And I raised my hands, dripping with parasite gore, and screamed one word. One. The sound shook through the arena like thunder. I pointed to the corpses at my feet. Two. I pointed to the burning ceiling, the twitching husks of parasites above. Three. I pointed the broken spear at the crowd. You're next. The silence broke, not with fear, with thunder. The crowd erupted, not in worship of their champions, but in worship of me. They chanted my name, my human name, a sound that didn't belong in this place, echoing through a galaxy that had never known me. I felt it, the shift, the collapse. Their gods were dead, their lies exposed. And now, they wanted a new predator. The parasites felt it too. I could hear them shrieking in my mind. No, no, not him, not human, not prey, not predator. They tried to swarm me, tried to drown me under their endless tide of tendrils and teeth. But the crowd surged with me. They weren't spectators anymore. They were soldiers. They ripped the parasites from the walls, from their neighbors, from their own bodies. They tore them apart with bare hands, screaming in rage, in freedom, in revelation. It wasn't just my fight anymore. It was theirs. The arena became a war zone. Parasites screeched. Hosts screamed. The Colosseum shook with the violence of 1,000 bodies tearing each other apart. And in the middle of it, I fought, not to survive, not for freedom, to kill, because that's what predators do. Hours passed, maybe days. I don't remember. When it was over, the arena floor was black with ichor, layered with corpses, steaming with rot. The crowd was still there, every eye on me, every throat silent. I stood alone in the center, chest heaving, body broken, hands soaked in blood that wasn't mine. And I knew what they saw. Not a prisoner, not a gladiator, not even human. They saw what the parasites had feared all along, a predator. The voice of the parasites came one last time, soft now, faint, fading. You cannot stop us. We are endless. Across the stars, we are endless. I smiled. Then I'll hunt you across the stars. And with that, the arena, once their cathedral, once their altar of blood, became mine. The stage where gods had died. And a predator was born.